Hey guys, welcome back to the Narrycast. I'm your host, Josh. And first of all, I wanted to say thank you guys for subscribing on the YouTube channel. As you guys have seen, I've kind of not really posted on Instagram, social media most, but I'm getting better at that. So make sure you guys follow on Instagram and as well as subscribe if you aren't already to the YouTube channel. And remember, the more you engage, the more the algorithm it pushes out to people that you may also like this channel, and that's a way of literally spreading a channel about Jesus to other people on the internet. So, speaking of Jesus on the internet, this is my guest today, which I'm super pumped for because Amber, like I was kind of telling you before, my wife showed me your channel like a long time ago. She introduced me to the Catholic faith, and it was so funny because I would tell people like, "Yeah, I saw this video." And it was blah blah. It was just this girl, and she was talking about blah blah whatever. And they'd be like, "Oh, okay, who was it?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know her name. It's the religious hippie. I don't know. I don't know her name though. It was so funny. But
I
yeah.
love
But
it.
how have you been doing?
I'm well. I'm
Uh,
so glad you asked me to come on here because I
yeah.
think, especially with social media really taking off in Catholic circles now since 2020, we have
Yeah.
all these great podcasts and we need to get more out there because
Yeah.
everybody has a story. Everybody
Hmm.
needs to have some sort of platform to share that story because I think
Hmm.
modern day evangelizing people need to feel connected,
Yeah.
and I feel like we're so isolated these days. So thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I agree. I look at social media as like it's its own mission field. It's
Yeah.
like we need people out there serving the homeless, and we need people out there serving like families in need and stuff like that. And honestly, for a lot of people, if they're struggling with pride or with just impure thoughts and stuff, maybe social media is somewhere it's like, hey, don't be on social media. Don't, and no one should be just doom scrolling and stuff like that. But at the same time, we shouldn't just abandon it and just let it become this like wasteland of terrible information and just terrible. Yeah, it's like a place people need to be. And I always felt so weird because I was like, man, I really feel called to kind of do this.
Yeah.
And my priest that walked me through it, he goes, this is what you need to do. You're going to always have to perfect your intentions, but go for it, because I promise you, God won't let it succeed if it's not meant for you. And so
True.
we started it and we're 4 months in, and we're, it's crazy to even think like I'm telling people subscribe. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. I'm just like, that's
Yeah.
wild. That's so crazy. So, but
And I
yeah.
know some people, they say like, "Oh, I only have like 200 subscribers."
Mhm.
My dude, if 200
Yeah.
people were in my house, I would be
Yeah.
overwhelmed. Like, that's
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if you were speaking on stage in front of 200 people, you'd be like, this is a lot of people.
Yes,
And yeah.
exactly. I feel like we
Yeah.
lose that perspective on social media. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
even if you're
Absolutely.
ministering to one soul, it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we kind of started in the beginning. And I honestly, I always have to kind of take myself back to it of like, if I post this video, if our interview, we get one view, one like, and one person comment, say, thank you so much. That was amazing. Like, I got something out of it. Then it'd be like,
Exactly.
boom, check, we did our job. And so,
Yep.
yeah, it's definitely something. I think the comparing, like the evil of comparing really gets us on social media.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And it didn't stop there.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your kind of background of like how did this all start? Was this like, I know some people social media of like, I never thought this would be a thing. It just kind of blew up on me. Like, but what's your story on the religious hippie?
Yeah, I definitely think that my story was a lot similar to that. Was just like,
Hmm.
oh, I didn't know this was going to happen. God kind of
Yeah.
dropped it on my lap.
Yeah.
I would say so. I was born and raised Catholic. I fell
Hmm.
away in 2011. I was about 11 years old, and we kind of bounced around to some not so in communion with Rome churches.
Mm.
And so I just kind of was like, I don't really want to be Catholic anymore when I was 11
Hmm.
because all my friends were doing these sleepover from, keep in mind, a
Hmm.
lot of my friends were Protestant.
Yeah.
So a lot of my friends were doing sleepovers Saturday into Sunday. They didn't have to go to
Hmm.
mass and they didn't have to, do all of these things and follow these rules that I felt
Yeah.
were so rigid as a kid. And this was the age of, social media and
Hmm.
things starting to come out about, celebrities. And so
Hmm.
I really got kind of swept up into the whirlwind of, social media, pride, all of these things,
Hmm.
wanting to be a part of the world, wanting to compete, wanting to be skinny, wanting to be all these things. And when you're that young, it kind of, without the foundation of the faith, I kind of
Mhm.
just started going down these deep rabbit holes. I
Yeah.
got I started having an eating disorder, self-harm, like there were a lot of things.
Mhm.
I was introduced to pornography when I was 13
Mhm.
and by a boy who was a little bit older than me.
Mhm.
And there was just so much wrong in my life as soon as I left the church. And I just felt like I was stuck in this dark hole.
Yeah.
But instead of being like, oh, God, help me, I was like, this is all your fault. Like, I can't
Yeah.
believe you let this happen.
Mhm.
And, I think it's a maturing thing when you start coming out of that and realizing, like,
Mhm.
no, actually, I'm responsible for my actions.
Yeah.
But I ended up having a major conversion in 2019. This was
Mhm.
before the whole shutdown and everything.
Yeah.
And I was kind of at rock bottom, I
Mhm.
was depressed. I was still addicted to pornography. I had like all of these issues and I was just so lost. And I was trying
Mhm.
to find something to fill the God shaped hole in my heart, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't find it. I mean, I tried everything. Outside of like drugs and stuff. Surprisingly, I never did drugs.
Mhm.
I never got
Yeah.
drunk and I never had sex outside of marriage. So those
Mhm.
were three things that I was like, okay, my guardian angel, Holy Spirit was
Yeah.
definitely watching over me.
Yeah.
There were so many opportunities to do those things. And I
Mhm.
was like, I kind of saw how they
Mhm.
affected my group at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't really want to be like you guys. You guys seem even more miserable. I'm like,
Mhm.
I'll stick with my little misery over here.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, I was like, you know what? Last resort, I am going to go to mass and just see what happens. And
Mhm.
I went to mass. I sat in the back. The entire time I was like, I need to leave. I need to leave. Like, I don't belong here. People know I don't
Mhm.
belong here. Like,
Mhm.
I'm an outcast, so to speak, and I just don't
Yeah.
belong here. And then, right when I was thinking about leaving, the bells for consecration rang and
Mhm.
everything just kind of froze. And I was just like, okay, I'm dead. Like, there's like, what's going on? And the priest rose, Jesus, he raised Jesus up. And I felt Jesus speak into my heart. He said, do you
Mhm.
trust me? And
Mhm.
at this time, I didn't know about divine mercy. I mean, I knew about it, but it was
Yeah.
so far back in my childhood. And I
Mhm.
was just like, excuse me?
Yeah.
No, like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about?
Uh,
And, we kind of did this back and forth thing where I was like, no. And he was like, do you
mhm.
trust me? And I was like, no. He's like, do you trust me? And we did that for I don't know how long. And then finally I was
Mhm.
like, you know what? Fine. God's
Mhm.
very persistent.
Yeah.
And he, that fine, I'll
Mhm.
try, was
Mhm.
just like the little crack that he needed to be able
Yeah.
to get in. And it kind of just felt like he was chiseling away the pieces of like
Mhm.
my stone heart that had been built up over years.
Yeah.
And that's when everything changed. And
Mhm.
I started, it took me a while to really take my faith seriously since I was so
Yeah.
new. I wasn't really sure.
Mhm.
But I was raised in the traditional Latin Mass. And so
Yeah.
after a couple months of trying out different parishes and things like that, I ended up going back to my childhood parish.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's kind of a
Nice.
summary of that.
That's awesome. And
Thank
so,
you.
when did the social media stuff come in? Like, when did you start? Because if you felt like maybe a little bit like I'm not, maybe like you said you weren't taking it seriously. So you probably also felt a little bit about like, I would assume, like with posting, like, who am I to be posting?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
how did that kind of come about?
Yeah, so I don't think that started happening until about the winter of 2019. So I
Okay.
converted in summer of 2019.
Okay. Gotcha.
And around December of 2019 is when I really started feeling like this pull to go to confession. At that
Hmm.
time, I hadn't even been back to confession. I was still trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
And the church that I was at when all that conversion stuff happened, it wasn't very how do I say it? It wasn't it there were a lot of things that they did that
Hmm.
weren't a part of the church, basically.
Hmm. Yeah.
There were a lot of abuses that happened. There were a lot of things like theology that they taught that wasn't correct.
Yeah.
And like the girls wanted female priests and they wanted contraception
Hmm.
passed out after mass and all
Dang.
these things. And I was like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
So for me, I really started taking my faith seriously after that when they at the youth group took us to a Buddhist temple to meditate.
Oh gosh.
The yeah, it was awful. And that's when I
That's
realized, I'm
wild.
like, you know what? I need to do something here because
Yeah.
this is not it for me. As far as
Yeah.
I know now, that church is, revised and they added a new priest in and
Yeah.
things are better. But at that time, I was really looking for something more traditional, and that's when I went back to confession.
Mm.
Um, and I was like, a little shaky about it. But once I went back to confession, I really had this new internalized, like, I'm going to do this. Like, this is
Mm.
me now. I'm not going to go
Yeah.
back. I'm not going to backslide. I'm going to do this. Of course, we all backslide to an extent into, habits and
Yeah.
things. But the difference was instead of giving up and just giving in, I was like, no, we're going to get back up, go to confession and try again.
Yeah.
And so with that new mindset, I went home and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try and find young Catholic content creators who maybe were in the same position I was in and maybe could give me some guidance and some advice on what to do in these situations. Because at that time, I had no support. While my
Yeah.
family knew I reverted, kind of, they didn't know to the extent that I reverted.
Mm.
So for me, I was like, I really want to make sure that this is a me thing and I'm not just doing it because of other people's expectations.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I tried to find other Catholic content creators who were my age, who were talking about their experiences. And keep in
Mm-hmm.
mind, 2019,
Yeah.
at this time, people were online, but not as much as after the whole shutdown and COVID
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
So I couldn't find anybody. I
Mm.
found, like middle-aged men or older men, Catholic
Yeah.
Answers, Father Mike Schmitz,
Yeah.
loved them all, like
Yeah.
fantastic. But the other side of it was moms,
Yeah.
Catholic moms sharing their side. But
Yeah.
nowhere did I see young Catholic women or men talking about
Mm-hmm.
their experiences. And as I kind of realized that, I was like, well, maybe that's something I'm meant to do. Like maybe that's what
Yeah.
God's calling me to do. And I had to pray about it a lot. I went to
Yeah.
adoration a lot. And then I was just decided one day, you know what? I'm just going to post a video. I'm just going to post a small, it was awful. The quality was so bad.
Yeah.
And the music was something, I don't know, I think it was like Catholic Czech or something. And it was on
Uh,
TikTok. Blech, TikTok. But that video blew up and I gained thousands and thousands of followers overnight. And that was
wow.
kind of my sign from God that he
Yeah.
wanted me to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of took off from there. And then I went from TikTok to Instagram, Instagram to YouTube, and then YouTube to Twitter, or X, I guess now. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how it started. And I've just
Nice.
kind of been walking through God's doors ever since. It's
Yeah.
not me, it's God. I have no idea how I got here.
Yeah. It is pretty wild, kind of like thinking of your story of like how God's there, and
hmm
it's almost like He'll let us go down like to the deep and whatever, and we always have free will to choose. But
Yeah.
it seems like there is a part of Him though that's like, okay, I'm gonna kind of draw the line because yeah, that is like with everything going on in your life. I like reminds me of my story of just like being involved with so many Protestant friends in college that were just like we're saved by it's faith alone, like we're
Yeah.
saved, like we're good. You can do like what like let's live up college because like it doesn't matter
You
kind of
have nothing
thing.
to lose.
Yeah, and it wasn't until I really examined back, but even in high school, I had some friends who were super Christian, but like to like a judgmental standpoint where they were judging others
hmm
and everything, and it was kind of the same non-denominational or Protestant type like faith alone. And looking back though, I was like, okay, well, like I went down this road and like I used to judge others, and then I went down that road of like, yeah, I mean, as long as your intentions are pure with your girlfriend, it doesn't matter if you sleep together, and like all this stuff that we were like telling each other, making these excuses. Um, but I had always thought to myself like, there's got to be more though to like this faith stuff, and I
Right.
just never like looked into it at all. But there was something like when I finally did my examination of my like testimony to see like where was God at, and I remember that specifically, like always thinking that like there's got to be more to this, and I feel like now looking back at it, instead of like there's got to be more to it, I feel like God was in my ear saying there is more to this. And it
Right.
wasn't until my wife later was like, I was a trumpet performance major, and so I played at plenty of masses. They were super weird. The music was super boring, and
Ooh.
then I met my wife, and she's like, "Do you want to go to mass with me?" I was like, "Oh gosh." I was like, "Okay, I will, but I won't become Catholic." And that's typically your starting point. That's usually what people say right before they start their journey to become Catholic. But
It's true.
yeah, but it's interesting, yeah, just to hear like, yeah, God was in your ear, but it's like I wasn't listening. I was kind of
Yeah.
pushing it away. But it was finally to that point where it's like we both had those that moment though where it was like those bells rang and you're like, okay, I'm listening. Like,
Yes.
okay. Like
And
there's
I think
finally a smack that you're like, okay, I'm listening.
exactly.
Mm,
Yeah, exactly. And I definitely think it comes with a type of maturity. It's kind of, like God is a father, right? He's a
mm-hmm.
father to us. And so what happens when a kid goes astray and doesn't listen to you? Hands off. They
Yeah.
come back.
Yeah.
It's just like the prodigal son. He spent
Mm-hmm.
all of his father's wealth and then he came back crawling to his father. And his father was just like, yay, he's back. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Sometimes God has to be a little hands off with us to show us that we need him.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times it's a test, but other times it's because of our own choices. Like you said,
Yeah.
we have free will to decide to follow Christ or not to follow Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where even when I have felt as though, um, not that God's abandoned me, but I feel as though he's kind of leaving me to be more,
Mm-hmm.
to be tested sort of.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I've kind of made this, I don't know, pact with myself where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't care what I go through as
Mm-hmm.
long as I am still faithful to Christ. Because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, we are going to be going through a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
But we should, I guess in a way, we should expect to be treated the same way the saints were treated and the same way Christ
Yeah.
was treated while on earth. So
Yeah.
for me, it's like I don't care what I go through as long as I have Christ, I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's kind of one of those mindsets that has really changed the way that I'm Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like my faith doesn't waver as much as it used to.
Yeah.
Where it's like it used to be like, oh, why is God letting this happen to me? Like, oh, desolation, this
Mm-hmm.
and this and this. Instead, it's just like, okay, God, challenge accepted.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I told you in the Bible, you're gonna be persecuted. Like
Mhm.
this is gonna happen. I'm like, dang, you're right. You did say
Yep. You're like,
that.
what part of that did you not understand?
Yeah, yeah. Mentioning God as like a father figure, it reminds me of this awesome like my best friend here is he's a parish focused missionary in Tulsa, and he has this awesome testimony of like when he was in college in a folk. I don't know if it was focus back then, but it was some kind of missionary told him. He said, like, Brandon, I want you to think of something. It's like when you're playing in the mud and you're getting all dirty, and then you realize like, oh no, like I just got like all these new clothes and my new shoes and everything dirty, and so you're freaking out because you're like, my dad's going to kill me, and you hear his truck pull up and the door shut, so you run to your favorite hiding spot and you're hiding there, and then all of a sudden you feel these hands grab you and lift you up, because what you don't know is that your father is always watching. Your father's always there, and he knows your favorite hiding spot, and you don't need to get clean before you go to him, but he'll actually meet you there
Yeah.
and pick you up and wash you off. And I was like, wow, that's powerful. I'm like, that's such a great analogy and such a cool like way to think about that. Because yeah, there's so many times in life where I felt like, yeah, kind of that same like why is God letting all this happen? Like this is crazy, and then just kind of getting mad at God or whatever. Just yeah.
It's really easy to, especially because sometimes when God washes us off, it's not always like a nice warm bubble bath. Sometimes it's a
Yeah.
hose in the
Yeah.
backyard.
Yeah.
It's a wake up call.
Yeah, a fire hose is just knock
Yeah.
you off your
It's
feet.
like, shh.
Yeah, but you're clean. No, that's awesome.
Yes, but I mean that's the whole point though is I feel like people need wake up calls. I feel like
Yeah,
today people are not everybody of course. Some people are really in tune with it, but so many people don't know how to die to themselves. So
yeah,
many people don't know how to suffer well or how to sacrifice because the world around us has constantly told us, do what makes you happy,
yeah,
be comfortable. If you are suffering or you're uncomfortable, that's bad. And it's like,
yeah,
no, the Catholic teaching is that suffering is good. It's for our sanctification.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I come from as part of a multi-level marketing company, and we're doing really well in it. But it's funny now because I'm still friends with all those people on social media and seeing all those posts that like I used to even post these things or share them, and these people just having like kind of the opposite. Like I saw someone share some, I don't remember word for word, but it was something like be okay with getting rid of those people that aren't helping you get to the next level. And I was like, oh, that seems so backwards. Like that's so
Right.
wild. It's like, how about serve those that aren't helping you get to the next level, or be yeah, just that's been my theme for my life lately, is just being a servant. Like how can I do my job? Like I'm a development director, I do fundraising, but a lot of times my job is to set up all these meetings and to do this
Mhm.
fundraising stuff, and then step out of the way and let the priest take over and let him do the ask and let him do the work. And so a lot of it's kind of like you got to put your pride aside and just kind of step aside and learn to be a servant. And yeah.
Yeah, which I think can be so difficult, especially on social media,
Yeah.
where pride is just running rampant. I mean,
Yeah.
all you have to do is take a quick look at X to see that
Hmm.
there is so much demonic activity.
Yeah.
And some of it comes from Catholics,
Yeah.
honestly. Like some of it does come from Catholics.
Yeah.
I've been dragged through the mud on X so many times for simply just existing. And,
Hmm.
I don't think that it's one of those things where we can just defend ourselves. I feel like a lot of the
Yeah.
time when we defend ourselves, it makes it worse. And so
Hmm.
it's almost practicing humility in a way of just being like, okay, I'm not going to defend myself in this area. Now that doesn't mean we
Hmm.
can't defend church teaching or something,
Yeah.
but defending ourselves, sometimes it's just a lesson in humility to be able to take
Hmm.
something and be like, that's not true, but God knows it's not true, and I don't have to say anything to them, and I'm
Hmm.
going to use this opportunity as, a practice and virtue of humility.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel like it's so hard to evangelize and be what you're saying, like humble on social media, because there are
Hmm.
so many people willing to just hide behind a screen and attack one another.
Yeah.
And I see that all the time. Or there have been times where it's like somebody's called me out for something, but then I'm like, yeah, that's totally right. But then they do the exact same thing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but what?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's like we have to understand when we're on social media, people are always going to be hypocritical. People are always going to find something to nitpick. But
Yeah.
this type of ministry, the online type of ministry, it's not for the weak of heart. There are specific
Yeah.
people who are called to it, but
Mhm.
also you just think about any kind of ministry. I mean,
Yeah.
like you mentioned in the beginning, there are people who help the homeless, who help the hungry. That is not for the weak of heart.
Yeah.
You're putting yourself in some pretty dangerous situations, especially if
Yeah.
you're in Chicago. I used to work at a soup kitchen, or volunteer, I should say, at a
Mhm.
soup kitchen, and a regular of ours, a man who used to come in every single day for food, he was killed
Wow.
last year or 2 years ago because of turf war. But he was
Jeez.
killed in the volunteering area. Like,
Dang.
yeah, so we were all like, it didn't happen while I was there, but he was killed, at the soup
Mhm.
kitchen.
Yeah.
And so you're putting yourself in harm's way no matter what, but this is what we're called to help those in need. And there are so many
Yeah.
ministers, they go to prisons and
Yeah.
minister to people there. Sisters of, charity, they go to just anywhere, and so
Mhm. Yeah.
ministry in general is not for the weak of heart.
Yeah. Which what really puts in perspective what some of these like religious life we're probably going through. Like, and they probably don't talk about it because they are probably holier than we are. But I'm just like imagine like yeah, like Sisters for Life in New York, like them
Oh
like
yeah.
walking around New York City, like they've got to just be like being met with most like a lot of the times great like feedback and like sisters like we love you whatever, but then also on the other side I can't imagine the hate they also must just
Yeah.
like encounter. Sister Mary Grace had a great Sikh, I think yeah, this past year when she said that person came up to her on campus and was just
Yes.
like I don't know who you are, but I don't like you or I hate you or whatever like that. And I was just like like geez, like I
How do
might
you
like
handle that?
yeah, it's like I can't imagine my stomach would turn inside if someone just randomly walked up to me and said that. And just be like, "What in the world?"
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
there have
is.
been times where my husband and I, we went to my sister's wedding
Mm-hmm.
this past July, and we met a priest there who did my sister's wedding, of course, and we
Mm-hmm.
just fell in love with him. Like, he was amazing.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, let me walk you to your car." And we were like, "Okay, great." And we parked on kind of a bad side of town, and he was just like, and we were like, "Father, are you okay?" And he's like, "Well, one of my friends got spit on and kicked over here because of the people that
Jeez.
are here." And we were like, "Don't worry, Father, we protect you." And he's just like, "Oh, don't worry about me. Like, it's just a part of being a priest." And I was just like,
Yeah.
that's so sad, but also it's just a reality that people are
Yeah.
broken and they take it out on what is beautiful and good and true, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had our priest here. We're at a university parish, like literally a Newman Center,
Wow.
and he ordered DoorDash, and the person came up and was a Pentecostal and had like a phone in his hand, and everything with his pastor on the phone when he realized where he was going, and yeah, literally told him like you need to stop leading these people to hell, and it's just like wow,
Awkward.
that's yeah, it's wild. But yeah, I think Carlo Brizard was one that told me. He said your comment section, like your positive comments and your bad comments should mean the same to you, which is
Yeah.
absolutely nothing. Like they should don't let the positive comments inflate your ego and don't let the bad
Mhm.
comments tear you down. Like and he said, and then also evangelization doesn't happen in the comment section. Which is probably the one thing for me being newer to this world is like, okay, when we do this, like I need to remember that like there may be hearts change, but my goal should be to plant a seed
Yeah.
and then hopefully encourage them. And I always invite them throughout each episode, like invite them to check out your nearest homeless shelter or whatever, or to volunteer with whatever. Like I always try to invite them to do something within. So wherever you're like watching from, you may be like moved to then go do something. And then my hope would be that they would meet somebody that would continue to walk with them in person, because you can continue to watch my podcast week after week after week, but you need that relationship and you need that, like, I mean, you need someone to walk with in that community, like an actual community, and social media is not a community.
No, and I
uh,
definitely think, when it comes to this type of thing, you can really get caught up in people's opinions of what you're
yeah,
doing. But one of the main things you have to realize is you can't cater to everybody. And
yeah,
because just think about like big name corporations. If Walmart
yeah.
listened to every single bad critique they got, they wouldn't
Mhm.
exist because they wouldn't
Oh
be
yeah,
able to make everybody happy. And I
yeah,
think if you just make God happy, He will lead the people to you who need to see your things and need to
yeah,
listen to your story.
yeah,
Otherwise, I feel like we just get overwhelmed and then we want to quit. And I know
yeah.
tons and tons of content creators who started out right when I did in 2019, 2020,
Hmm.
and they were doing so well. And then all of a sudden, one's now a lesbian and one is falling away. And
Yeah,
like people, because of the comments that they got on social media that they couldn't refute.
yeah,
And I'm like, you have to just not look at the comments.
yeah.
You have to just
Hmm.
turn those off. I'm sorry, but like you said, the evangelizing doesn't happen in the comments, it happens
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
It happens from somebody listening. And
yeah,
people are going to have opinions because everybody has an opinion on something.
yeah.
And you could say something just a little bit wrong. You could use the wrong word, the wrong vocabulary, the wrong
Hmm.
tone of voice.
Yeah,
And people will be like, oh, this is what you meant. And da 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 da.
yeah. Hmm.
It doesn't matter because in
Hmm.
reality, we can't judge people's intentions.
Yeah,
We know our intentions and God
yeah.
knows our intentions. So if God
Hmm.
knows, we have nothing to worry about.
Yeah,
But people will always be out there to ridicule, to nitpick, and a lot of people can't handle that and they
yeah,
they fall away. And my biggest advice is please turn off the comments. Don't like turn
yeah,
off the comments, but like,
yeah.
like turn off the
Yeah, don't.
notifications on your
Yeah,
phone.
yeah, yeah. I think yeah, you can get the notifications off, and honestly, with content creators too, I feel like something me and my wife had talked about, which we'll get into our testimonies of our marriages and stuff.
Yeah.
But one thing she always told me is like, don't let it be about the numbers. Like we were kind of
Mhm.
talking earlier, it's like if one person viewed and one person liked it, one person commented, or so 200 people see our Instagram reel, it's like that's awesome,
Yeah.
but at the same time it doesn't matter. Like don't let the numbers, like if I'm at 670 subscribers today and then I'm at 660 tomorrow and I lose 10, like I shouldn't be like, oh no, crap, like what's
Mhm.
happening. Like it shouldn't be ran based on that. Like if I really feel God's calling me to do this, like follow his will and continue to work, but don't let the numbers decide like, oh, this is
Yeah.
successful or not successful.
Well, I also think, and just to kind of close that one out too, because I think it's so important for people to realize this, that ministry
Mhm.
cannot be treated like a regular job.
Yeah. Hmm.
Ministry is not based off the amount of money you get. Ministry
Yeah.
is not based off of the amount of likes or subscribers you get.
Yeah.
It's based on what God wants you to do and your calling. And whether He's calling you to make a video or a post or something, He's
Hmm.
calling you to do that for a reason. And you need to trust in that. No matter if you
Yeah.
think, like, oh, well, my reel only got like 100 views. And it's like,
Hmm.
there was somebody in that 100 that needed to see it.
Yeah.
And God had you do that for a reason. And I think
Yeah.
people oftentimes try to treat it like a regular corporate job. And it's like, it can't
Yeah.
be that way. That's so shallow. There's
Yeah.
something
Hmm.
so much deeper to ministry that
Hmm.
makes it worthwhile and you get nothing in return.
Yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
not nothing. You get, of course, like testimonies and people saying, like, I came
Yeah.
back to the church, but in today's day and age, they would see
Hmm.
it as nothing. But in reality,
Yeah.
it's so much more rewarding than a paycheck.
Yeah. And focusing on the further, like I hope that the impact is like not these subscribers and stuff that I'll get today or the comments and likes, but like I hope that someone's watching my podcast one day thinking like, hey, this is Saint Josh of Tulsa, like that,
Hmm.
or whatever. Like I want them to think like, or have these like, I like the goal is still the same, is to get to heaven, help others get to heaven. But
Yeah.
yeah, like you like thinking about the forever impact. Like hopefully the impact of this, and I know God can do it, is that it would impact people further on, or like anytime you're, even if it's not social media, just anytime you're
Yeah.
interacting with someone in their life, like hopefully you could have like 100 people at your men's event. We are actually talking about this recently. My friend was like, what makes a successful parish? And I was like, that's a great question. He goes, yeah, because you
Hmm.
could have 100 people at a men's event. That's awesome. But you could also have one person at the men's event, but that person goes on to become a priest, or that person becomes a saint. And you're like, dang, yeah, that's true. That's a good point. And so, yeah,
Exactly.
it can't be about numbers. It's not, you can't measure it on any of that.
Yeah, exactly. Only God can measure it. So
Yeah, absolutely.
just do what
Yeah.
God wants.
Oh yeah, it's not always easy, but just do it.
Yes.
So we're in this 3-part series, kind of. It's like an informal, not official part series, but we're talking about the power of testimony
Hmm.
with the Focus missionaries. They're some of the best of like helping others like share their testimony. So we talked about kind of the structure of it and everything, and why it's important to share a testimony. And then I had John Edwards on, who just had a brilliant like testimony. His amazing, one of those like just like knocks you off your feet, like crazy, how did you overcome those obstacles type testimonies.
Right.
And then I shared a little bit about mine as well, which isn't as like wild. It's a little bit more relatable and stuff, and I think everybody's is great for everybody. But I was thinking today, because I was just thinking about this with my wife, of like our testimony as a couple.
Yeah.
And I was like, this might be cool to hear, because I think I actually just recently saw like that you're married. I don't know if I knew
Mhm.
that. And I think maybe it's because sometimes you'll come across a social media video and it's like posted 4 years ago, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
whoops. It's like when you were on Pints with Aquinas. Like I saw that video, but I think it said like posted. It was like a couple years ago, right?
I
Like
think it's like
has it,
2 years now.
yeah. So I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this was a while ago. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Still relevant, but yeah.
yeah. So tell us, I guess, start off like just a little bit about your like how you and your husband met,
Yeah.
and that.
I love talking about this topic. So, Max and I met back in July of 2022.
Wow.
And at that time, I was traveling a whole bunch doing ministry stuff, but I was dating a man who was not Catholic. And I was going through some major struggles with him, constantly just, baptizing children and like
Mm,
just basic things. And I was getting so fed up because I was dating him before I came back into my faith. So
mm,
for me, it was one of those things where I'm like, well, let's see where things go. And things just weren't
yeah.
progressing. He wasn't interested in the faith. And it was really starting to frustrate me because he constantly told me, oh, I'll be interested. I'll get there, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was just dragging him all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
I was really starting to come up with just being like, you know what? This isn't it anymore. And he didn't want me to call him my boyfriend. There was a lot of issues surrounding that. I was confused. We weren't even technically dating at that point. But we were. It was very odd.
Yeah.
I was confused, and I decided that I was going to go do this talk in Colorado, and it was at SoCa with one of my good friends. And so I went there, I gave my talk, and I came back, and I had just this newfound love for the faith and being around like-minded Catholics and being able to just talk with them on a normal basis. I mean, yes, I was, this personality that they've seen online, but they treated
Mm,
me normally. And
yeah.
it was just so nice to be able to talk to people my age about faith. And it just enkindled this thing in me that I was just like, I want this in a relationship. I don't just
Mm,
want this in my friends. So I came back and I really had my heart set on just a Catholic guy.
mm,
So at that point, my best friend Chloe, she was like, oh, there's this young adult group at our church, it just started up again and Father so and so is running it now, so it's a lot better. And I was just like, no, I mean, I've been to tons of young adult groups, there is no way I'm going to another one. I
yeah.
have been like cornered, I have been grabbed, I have, by men who I'm sure meant well,
Mm-hmm.
but just didn't know the appropriate way of approaching a woman. And I was
Yeah.
like, I don't want to go through that. Plus now I'm even more, in the public eye than I was before.
Yeah.
And I didn't want the attention, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So anyway, needless to say, she dragged me kicking and screaming. So she was just like, you're going and I don't care. And I was just like, ugh. And I did have a good time. And this man came up to me and he said, "Oh, are you Amber Rose?" And I was like, "Yes." And he was like, "Oh, I'm Max." And I was just like,
Mhm.
"Hi." He was just like, "It's nice to meet you." And I was just like, "It's nice to meet
Like,
you too." And then he just walked away. He just left me alone. He
oh,
didn't he didn't want a hug. He didn't want my number. He was just like, "Oh, hey." And I was like,
yeah.
"Oh, normal
Like,
men."
oh, a normal person.
Normal. And after that, the entire night, I just gravitated towards him. I wanted to know
Yeah.
more about him. He interested me. He was playing chess with a brother friend of mine. And I just was like intrigued by the man
Yeah.
who didn't pay me any attention. I was just like,
Mhm.
finally, somebody who doesn't like fawn over me. Like I just
Yeah.
want someone to have to treat me normally.
Mhm.
And he was. And throughout the night I had guys coming up to me asking for my number, asking if I'm single. Are you this? Are you that? And I'm just like, but
Yeah.
I was just like, I'm busy. Sorry. I'm just over here. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so I just gravitated towards Max. And then after that, I constantly wanted to go back to the young
Mhm.
adult group just to see him.
Yeah.
And so I, kind of, I don't know, the second time, my best friend Chloe, she's just like, "Oh, Max has a crush on you." And I was just like, "What?" I was like, "Really?" I mean, this was the second time we met, okay? Like,
Yeah.
and I was just like, "That's so funny." So Max and I got to sit next to each other at a trivia game night type of thing that they had for the young
Mhm.
adults, and then we had a bonfire afterwards, and we got to talk,
Mhm.
and it was just so nice, and we exchanged numbers just
Mhm.
naturally, but in a group chat because Chloe was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, let's get a group chat going," and I was like, "Great." There's only the three of us,
I
so
was
we
gonna
were
say
like,
Chloe knew what she was doing. She's
mm-hmm. So we were like the little three amigos,
yeah.
and we started talking like a whole bunch in the group chat,
Uh-huh.
sending each other funny memes, like just really connecting in a group
Mhm.
setting so that I could feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
And then I really just loved his personality. And at this time,
Mhm.
I wasn't, like, oh my gosh, like we're gonna date or anything. I was just like,
Mhm.
wow, I really like him, and like he's devout and he's a convert. He
Yeah.
converted in April of 2021. So he got baptism and confirmation, all of that stuff. And I was
Mhm.
just like, oh, like someone who's actually going to confession and
Mhm.
loves their faith and is humble and caring and sweet and funny. I mean,
Yeah.
girls love a funny man.
Oh yeah.
And so then I went on Pints with Aquinas. So Chloe and
Mhm.
we did an 8.5 something hour drive out to
Mhm.
wherever we were going,
Yeah.
Steubenville.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure that was such an exciting drive, though. It probably went
yeah,
by like that, and then you were so
yes,
probably on a high leaving that you were like just back, and it's like I would
yep,
do that again if I had to.
exactly. Yeah, it was so
Yeah.
fun too because it was like
Yeah.
a road trip, that
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
desperately needed. I needed a getaway too. And
Yeah.
on that road trip, Max and I grew a lot closer through text
Mhm.
because Chloe was driving. So she
Oh
couldn't
yes.
respond to the group chat.
Yeah.
So Max and I got to get on a deeper level there.
Yeah.
And so then I went on Pints with Aquinas, and
Mhm.
Max is the one who said, it's in the video. He goes, it was a super chat, and
Mhm.
Matt goes, Maximilian says, Amber and Chloe agree with me that Matt is a boomer. And I was just like, so
Oh,
now
that's
I'm married
funny.
to him.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But it was really funny. I don't know if Matt
Yeah.
found it really funny, but it was Gen Z
Yeah.
found it really funny
Yeah. Yeah.
because being called a boomer is just really funny to us.
Yeah. That is so
um,
funny.
but yeah, so we started talking a whole bunch that entire trip, and then um, I ended up officially cutting things off with the other guy because I was
Mhm.
like, even though we technically weren't dating, because
Mhm.
I was still like, I just need to cut this off completely. If I'm
Yeah.
going to find a healthy future husband, like I just can't have any ties to
Yeah.
my past self.
Yeah.
So I cut it off completely. And and then a few months later, Max and I started dating, and because I was so detached, and I was just like, you
Mhm.
know what, I know what I want, and I'm going to try and pursue it. So Max asked me out in
Yeah.
November of
Mhm.
2022. We got engaged April 2023, and then we got married in
Nice.
June of 2024. So
No, that's awesome.
yeah, it's great.
That's great. That's awesome. So June 2024, is that what you said?
Yeah. So we got
Oh,
married
okay. So
probably
just
like
recently.
2 months ago.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So it's all new. So everything's
Yeah.
still great.
Yeah.
I'm
I
just kidding.
mean,
It'll stay great.
the process was so easy too, because like when you know, but Max and
Yeah.
I got so many things out of the way when we were
Yeah.
dating, or sorry, not
Yeah.
even dating, just friends. Like we
Yeah.
got
Yeah. Just,
all the big deep topics out of the way, not because like we were like let's have these topics, but because
mhm.
we were like, yeah, I met this person and like they believe this, and like I was just trying to explain to them this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have the same perspective, and
Yeah.
like everything we agreed on,
hmm
everything.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome.
it was just one of those moments where like the stars just align and you're just like, yeah, this is what God wants me to be, like this is who
Yeah.
God wants me to be with. And
Yeah.
it was one of those moments where you're just, people
Yeah.
always ask me like, how did you know? And I'm like, I can't explain it. I
Yeah.
can't tell you the feeling. I
Yeah.
can only tell you that when and when
Yeah.
you have the exact same experience, you're
Yeah.
going to be like, how do I explain this?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I thought too when I met my wife.
Yeah.
It's funny listening to people's stories because I love to go into it. So, okay, she's about to start a story. I'm going to be listening for where do I see God in this story? Like, where do I see Him like communicating and stuff? And I always find the funny ones being like the other people in the story where God was talking to them, and I just picture like Chloe being like, "Dang, she doesn't want to go," but God's like, "No, no, no, you got to get her there. You got to get her there.
Yeah.
Got to get
Yeah.
her." And so,
Just like you
so
don't have an
yeah,
option.
you have to get her there, drag her if you have to. And so
She
oh,
did.
it's so funny. Yeah, just seeing all the like how it all lines up. But
Yeah.
yeah, me and my wife are kind of similar. Like we just there's always just that something that like is kind of a shock, like, huh. And it's kind of is that first attraction.
Yeah.
And it may not be a physical, but just kind of like, yeah, like you're saying, you were just kind of drawn to him. Finally someone that was like treating you normal. And for me and my wife, it's always funny because ours is a little unconventional. I was looking to step down. I worked in this fitness studio looking to step down, and I was like, I really should probably hire a full sales staff first, and that way the place isn't going to go into like into shambles when I leave.
That's considerate
Um,
of you.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I stepped down. The owners always did so good by me. I was just burnt out, and so I literally hired like 4 salespeople. The very last person I hired is now my wife. So I hired her, and she's funny because when she tells the side story, she was like, yeah, the very first time I was ever like, oh, okay, was when you were showing me around the studio the very first day we met, and you were just giving me the tour, and it's like, yeah, okay, so here's the ladies bathroom, so we keep all like the cleaning supplies down here, and then up here is where we keep all the feminine products, so you got like the tampons and pads and stuff. And she was like, he was able to say tampons without giggling. It's so funny. So anytime someone asks her like, when was the first time you were attracted to Josh, I always jump in. I was like, I was able to say tampon without giggling.
I love that. That's so funny.
She's always like, don't say that. Okay. And then she has to explain. But it's so great. So
Hey man,
yeah,
it's
so
still, it makes for a good story.
yeah. So the moral of these 2 stories is you got to go to the young adult events and just get out there, or
Yep.
put an Indeed ad out and try to hire her. I don't know.
One of the two.
Yeah.
There's
So that's
multiple
awesome.
ways to find a wife.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's what I feel like nowadays. So me and my wife are now getting involved in Catholic Engaged Encounter. Once you've been married for 5 years, you can be a presenting couple, and so we are now like the presenting couple, or one of
Cool.
them. So I have a younger couple and an older couple, and what we found is we're putting together like our story. Like there's like all these talks that happen. Like the older couple do one, then the younger couple do one, and it's been so fun to like put together. I feel like I'm back in my like early days of discipleship where we are kind of putting together like not discerning, but doing my examination, looking back at my story to see like where was God moving, and kind of understanding my own testimony. And I was like, this is so cool because there is a testimony within each like marriage and stuff
Mhm.
as well. And I feel like that nowadays there's so much like people aren't seeking out date, like they're not looking to date or looking to like seek out a relationship and have like God as the center.
Yeah.
And that's what's kind of throwing everything for a loop. Is
Yeah.
that kind of what you see as well?
Yeah, I've seen that. I think something more commonly I've seen is that a lot of people just want to skip to marriage. Like so
Mm,
many people just want to rush past the dating part
yeah.
and just be like, "You're my wife now," or "You're my husband
Yeah.
now," and that's it. And
Yeah.
in reality, it's like, no, there's a process to this, and no, it doesn't have to take 5 years.
Yeah.
Max and I, we got engaged after 6 months of dating, and
Yeah.
that was because of the request of my spiritual director, who was also his RCIA instructor,
Mm,
who's a priest, a very traditional Catholic priest. So he was like, let's take the 6 months to get the marriage prep out of the way. Some people
yeah.
do it sooner, some people don't, but it
Yeah.
worked out for us because of also the situation we were in.
Yeah.
But I see the majority of people looking for a wife
Mhm.
and going in with high expectations.
Yeah.
We need to go in looking for relationships, not always
Mhm.
romantic, and have
Yeah.
no expectations.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the times the high expectations, they really set you up for disaster. I'm not saying
Mhm.
don't have high standards. Standards and
Yeah.
expectations are different.
Yeah.
When Max and I started becoming friends, he had no expectations of dating me. He wasn't pushy about it. He wasn't like, "Oh, are you single yet?" He wasn't being super like, "Oh, my motivation is to date you and marry you." His
Yeah.
motivation was to get to know me better
Mhm.
on a personal level, on a level where I felt like I could trust him, and a level that I think a lot of women struggle with sometimes, where
Mhm.
they feel like, oh, here's a strange man, and suddenly I'm going on a date with him, but I don't really know anything about him. And
Mhm.
it kind of creates this wall in us where we feel like we
Yeah.
have to be kind of protective of ourselves.
Yeah.
Some women like, I don't know, some women like that, you know?
Yeah.
They like being asked out right away.
Yeah.
But in my experience, a lot of the women who are like marriage material, they want to get to know you on a deeper level first.
Mhm.
And then they're willing to kind of go on a date with you. And people are like,
Yeah.
oh, but that takes forever. I'm like, good things take time. You
Yeah.
know, you can't rush everything. And if you are
Mhm.
patient, that's a virtue. Like God
Yeah.
rewards patience.
Yeah.
And, it's every situation's different. I know people who
Mhm.
got married after 3 months of dating. I know people who
Mhm.
got married after like 7 months of dating.
Yeah.
It really, or whatever. Anyway, it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
Everyone's story is different. But in my experience, again, people always kind of are like, oh, well, she's just saying that's the end all be all. No, I'm just saying my experience from
Yeah.
what I have seen is that people rush into it. And then the girls are like, oh, yay. But then they get to know them a little better and they're like, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or vice versa, of course. There's the guy side too. I just only know the girl side because I talk to most girls.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
And really, what we need to do is we need to go to these events and not have this expectation of going in and finding a wife, but going in and finding
Mhm.
Christ centered relationships,
Yeah.
whether that is romantic or not.
Mhm. Yeah.
Maybe God's sending you there because you need guy friends or girlfriends,
Yeah. Yeah.
who knows, but it's not always going to be romantic. And I think a lot of people are let down when they don't find their wife at a youth group, or they feel the pressure they have to make a relationship work at a youth group because they're never going to find anybody else. And
Yeah.
it gets really tangled up,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think people are so like rushed to get married? I know there's obviously the other side of society that's not really in the Catholic realm, but the other side that's like never going to get married or anything.
Yeah.
But I guess specifically within the Catholic realm, like yeah, it seems like there are a lot of people that are like like I've talked to guys before that are super frustrated and really like kind of getting sad, depressed because it's like they haven't had a girlfriend in 2 years or something,
Yeah.
but they're like 23 or whatever.
Hmm.
You're like, dude, you're still super young, like
Yeah,
really young. Um,
I agree.
but yeah, why do you think they're so rushed into it?
I
And
mean,
is it both men and women, or is it mainly one side? Do you think?
I definitely think it's both sides, but for different
Yeah.
reasons. For women, it's because we have a biological clock. That's
Hmm.
just true. We
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And we need to be very careful about who we marry because we need to make sure that our babies are taken care of, that we're taken care of.
Hmm.
And so women, honestly, it makes sense to me that they're a lot more picky, but they're
Hmm.
also like, I want to be married already. It makes sense
Yeah.
to me because like we have to be careful because we have to be in that environment where we're going to be protected and taken care of, and our babies will be as well. On the
Yeah.
other side, though, I also understand that like biological clocks are ticking. Like that's
Hmm.
something that a lot of women worry about.
Yeah.
And then on the other spectrum for men, I feel like not all men, of course, but some men
Hmm.
feel as though it's like the end goal.
Yeah.
Like that is, oh, getting married and having kids, that's it. Like
Yeah.
then my life will be complete. No, make your life
Mm.
complete now. Like work on yourself, have God at the center of your life. You can do things and want that.
Yeah.
It's not bad to want a family and to want kids, but don't treat it as though it's like the end. Like, oh, I'll do this and then I'll be satisfied, or I'll
Yeah.
do this and then. It's like you can have that want, but you also need to realize that there's going to be other things that need your attention and other things that'll keep piling up. That's not the end all be all.
Yeah.
Um families are so important, and I think a lot of guys want to have families young, but I never know sometimes, and this was a huge issue in a circle I was in back in the day, where some guys only wanted to get married to have sex,
Mm,
unfortunately.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I had to be the one to kind of be like, that's really messed up.
yeah, yeah.
And because like some Catholic guys, I mean, I was a part of a group back in the day where that was the only reason they wanted to get married. And
Hmm.
now they're all like, one's divorced, one's a baby mommy without a dad. And it's just
Hmm.
really messed up. It's very
Yeah,
disordered.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
feel really bad.
Yeah, they don't realize that the lust part doesn't go away. Like just because you're married and you can have sex and you
Yes.
should be part, it should be a major part of your relationship. It's not like you can't make it that the sinner. Like
Yep.
it's yeah,
And let me tell you, women know.
yeah,
Women know when that is the center of
hmm,
the relationship, and they will
yeah,
not feel respected. They will not feel safe. They
hmm,
will definitely not try and go on dates with you because
yeah,
they have an intuition and they know when a man has his orders properly
hmm,
aligned and when he doesn't.
yeah, yeah,
And like I said, women have to be careful. I think the rush really does come from sometimes from, groups telling them like, oh, getting married young and stuff, that's how you're really going to benefit society and that's how you're
hmm,
going to change the world, basically. But in my opinion, it's like you can change the world on your own. Like, not that you
yeah,
can't get married or like definitely get married, but
mhm,
getting married in itself will not fix the world.
yeah,
It takes so much more than that. It takes raising good, holy kids. It takes sacrifice. It takes penance. It takes all these things.
hmm,
And marriage is a cross. Like it is.
yeah,
I mean, you have to work at it every single day. It's not something
yeah,
you just get married and everything's like the magazines. Everything's like, oh yeah, everything's well, maybe not the magazines today, but the
yeah,
magazines
yeah,
maybe in the 50s.
yeah, yeah.
Um
But yeah,
yeah, and I definitely think there's a push from first of all, there's a push from the traditional side of things to get married because
hmm,
that's how you're going to fix society. But then some guys want to do the complete opposite of
hmm,
secular society and be like, they don't want me to get married at all. Well, I'm going to get married and have like 10 kids.
hmm,
And it's just like, yeah, but there's balance in the middle. There is
yeah.
balance in the middle.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I do like what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying about men is that we do have this kind of like, if I only get married, then I'll be happy. Or
Yes.
once I get this promotion at work, then I'll be happy. If I'm making $5,000 a month, I'll be happy. Or maybe now it's 7,500 a month or ten
Hmm.
thousand a month. Or maybe if I only had this membership of this golf course, it's like this constant, like
Yeah.
never ending. And people don't. I think that's when some even Catholic men don't realize that like you have your priorities wrong right now, like God family business or God family work, like they're out of whack. I know you're maybe you're trying to, like, you're still going to Sunday mass and maybe you are doing adoration or daily mass and praying with your family, but like if your mind and your heart's not in order of
Hmm.
like what you're thinking about, it's just things are going to get out of whack. And then I like what you said about expectations versus in like would you compare not expectations and standards,
Yeah.
because definitely you should have standards, and there's going to be some that are like made of steel that should not bend, and then
Exactly.
there's going to be some that kind of need to be more like rubber, and that like you guys will meet and like kind of like
Yeah.
okay, and that I guess some more of like the expectations. But I feel like that was me and my wife. It was like we got together and everything was great, and then as I'm losing my mic, as we started like moving on into the marriage, you start to like realize where you thought maybe she would come around on this and she thought you would change your mind and you guys aren't. And that's where like communication just becomes such a big thing. And so
Yes.
maybe that is why people that are rushing into it are seeing such a terrible result. But
Hmm.
yeah, I feel like it's that dating phase is so um underestimated,
It's also
overestimated.
really hard because a lot of single people don't want to hear advice from married or people who are
Yeah,
dating.
yeah.
And I get it. I get the
Mhm.
frustration. Um, but it's also like the dating pool sucks right now. I'm going to say that because I mean,
Mhm.
it's just hard. I
Mhm.
know tons and tons of friends who want to get married and they're doing Catholic Match. They're doing,
Mhm.
speed dating online. They're doing all these things and it's like they're still just not finding anybody. There's no quality people who they
Yeah.
can find on those programs. And sometimes, I feel like Not all the time, and I know people are kind of tired of hearing it, but like when you stop trying so hard,
Hmm.
when you let God take the reins on this, he will
Yeah.
lead somebody to you.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and I just think that so many people are trying to control, their relationships and what
Yeah.
happens. I mean, I knew tons and tons of people who were so frustrated that I would not go out on a date with them. And I was like, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Hmm.
Your expectations are up here and I'm,
Hmm.
just not interested,
Yeah.
and they have this idea of what's going to happen and how it's going to happen and a script in their
Hmm.
head of how it's going to go, and when it doesn't go that way, it's like they think they're failing, and it's like you're not
Yeah.
failing. It's just
Yeah.
maybe take a lighter approach, just
Yeah.
be there, exist, and have
Hmm.
fun.
Yeah.
Because women love seeing men who have fun. Women
Yeah.
love
Hmm.
seeing men who can just joke around with the guys, who aren't there, seeking out women like doo doo
Yeah.
doo doo.
Yeah.
They want somebody who they can observe. I observed
Yeah.
Max for a few weeks. Like,
Yeah.
we talked, of course, but I also observed how he was around other people. He was very
Yeah.
happy, he was funny. He wasn't like, I don't know how to explain. He wasn't looking for anything. He was just
Yeah.
existing, and I think that was the
Yeah.
most attractive thing about him.
Yeah. And I think you like when you do talk to married couples, they'll always have that about their spouse. Like I loved seeing my wife interact with members when we worked at that fitness studio together. Like just seeing her light up and how caring she was and everything. It was just like you could just see right away. Like this is a very intentional girl. Like
Yeah.
her phone was never in her pocket. Like it was always away. And she was just such a like a people person. And yeah, it's like both sides, but definitely men need to know the like women are watching like
Yep.
they're watching and they just like men can flip a switch and like go from like me and my wife we went from like liking each other to like I like all of a sudden was like I'm ready to do this and like ready to date, but women take a little bit longer to process and like a little bit longer to like fill that out, I feel.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I feel like that's something that they just kind of you got to be patient in that
I
dating
also
world.
yeah, I also
Yeah.
think women like to be pursued.
Yeah.
And pursuing is not just okay, I want to date you. It's,
Yeah.
maybe having an intentional conversation with her, asking
Yeah.
her about her day. And
Yeah.
then the next week, being like, oh, I saw this and I thought of you. Not like a big gift or anything, but maybe like a flower. Or
Mhm.
women like to be like, oh, like he's flirting with me. They don't want to be like,
Yeah.
hey, you want to go on a date?
Yeah.
I'll pick you up at 8.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
women want that connection. We want that.
Mhm.
Women are very emotional, obviously.
Yeah.
Men are more, visual. So
Yeah.
women want that physical and emotional connection with somebody, and men
Mhm.
just see what they want and they're very object oriented and they're like boom boom
Yeah.
boom. Great. I think that's great for men. Like that's
Mhm.
awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. But you also have to learn when to cater to women and what we need as well, and then women
Yeah.
can cater to men as well. I think a lot of times, like we said, men just kind of go into it like, I like you, I want to date you, let's go on a date. And the woman's like, who are you?
Yeah.
Where
That
did you
is
come from?
yeah, that is still so funny to know that. I mean, I guess it makes sense a little bit just being like real popular on social media, but that's so funny to think like I would have never had the courage to be able to do that to any girl, but
Yeah.
for sure, like a social media person or something, I'd be like, someone would be like, go do it. I'm like, no, absolutely
Maybe
not.
it was a bet. Maybe it was a bet. They were like, I'll
Maybe
give
it
you
was.
$5 if you ask her out. And I'd be like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Like, what if she says no? I'll still give you $5. Like, deal. I'm on it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so
Honestly, I
funny.
would respect that. I think that'd be really funny.
Yeah, that would be
But
kind of
also, I
funny.
want to be in on the bet. Give me a cut.
Yeah, yeah. Like, you need to give a like a you maybe have said yes to some if someone had been like, I'll give you $20.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Exactly.
don't have to talk to them at all afterwards, but
Yeah.
yeah, that pursue though of women for men, like it continues into marriage too,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people start seeing problems in the marriage, especially like a few years in, because they start thinking like my wife's not as affectionate. It's because you kind of gotten back into the real world and
Mhm.
you have started to get back on the focus of like your work, but then also you're still trying to hang out with your friends like you were single, and you're still trying to do all this stuff like you were single, and you don't realize like I'm not pursuing my wife like she was my girlfriend or like
Right.
she was before she was my girlfriend. And yeah, women are they respond to being pursued, And that was something for me and my wife. Like, I didn't understand that at all. Like, that didn't make any sense to me. I even kind of felt offended. I was like, oh, okay, so you can just like not act lovey if I'm in a bad mood. And she's like, well, I mean, it's kind of how it works. But it's like, no, I shouldn't act like that. But that is just how like it works. Like
Yep.
men are supposed to pursue women, and they react like with love, and that's like how it works.
Yeah.
It's like,
And I think,
dang,
especially for women, it's like in order to unlock that, they need to feel safe with somebody and they need to feel like they have a connection to them. And so a lot of
yeah,
guys will be like, why isn't she like holding my hand and this and that? I'm like, that's something you have to work up to.
yeah,
If she wants to hold your hand or something, you have to be worthy of being your hand held. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? It's not just like a
yeah,
perk you get when you take her on a date. It's not something
yeah,
she owes you. And
yeah,
that goes for other things too,
yeah,
but it's something that kind of just comes naturally, and I
yeah,
think that's the most important thing.
yeah,
Is the people I know who have broken up rushed into things like
yeah.
really fast, and they didn't take the time to get to know each other. It kind of went to physical stuff right away.
Hmm.
And then they realized they just didn't click emotionally. And women sometimes
Hmm.
they realize that later on, and they're just like,
Hmm.
wait, we actually don't have the same views on almost anything, or
Hmm.
there's differences there that can't be overlooked.
Yeah.
And once the rose colored glasses are kind of removed, it's
Mhm.
just kind of like oh, well, I guess we don't really click kind of thing. And I've
Yeah.
seen that happen time and time again, and I
Yeah.
think it's something that I think it just really says something about taking your time and
Yeah.
not rushing. And that doesn't mean you take
Yeah.
years, it just means
Hmm.
not the first week you know them.
Yeah. And I was looking for, oh, I think I found it. So I started using my wife's Bible.
Yeah.
And she's highlighted and underlined things. It's one she used in college. But it still's got like thank you notes. Like here's like a note from a focus missionary named Amanda,
Aw.
and which I know Amanda really well now, which is super cool. But it's from college. But I came across this, and it's literally like she took all this kind of stress of like wanting to be married and stuff to prayer,
Oh
and
yeah.
she wrote this note to Jesus. But like, I'm not gonna read the whole thing because it's long, but it really is like in here talking about me, like talking
Right.
about my future spouse. And it's like, Lord, I pray that I can show him a love he's never received from a person. I want to show him your love only. And it's just super cool. Like it was so funny because I just came across this one time. I was like, whoa, this is cool.
It's
um
wonderful to see stuff like that and see how it
yeah,
plays out.
yeah, it really is. And so I'm really like blessed to still have that. Like that could have easily just got thrown away at some point, but it literally stayed in this Bible for years and years because we didn't know each other until 5 years after college. And then I
Right.
probably started using this like a few months ago. So that's like 5 years in a marriage. So it's like it's been in there for like 10 years, which is
Yeah.
wild. But that's something too I think people need to realize is being patient in that dating phase
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean you're not doing anything, but like take it to prayer, like take it to adoration, and take those intentions to mass with you, and to pray for it. Like
Yeah.
it's okay to ask God like for your vocation in general. I mean, maybe you're discerning the priesthood or religious life, but if you know like you feel like you are called to marriage, it is okay to ask God for that, or ask God to prepare
Exactly.
yourself. Maybe God's not done working on you yet and molding you into the man or woman you're supposed to be before you meet your wife. We both talked
Yeah.
about if she would have known me in college, she would have hated me. And if I would have known her in college, I would have think she was some nerdy Catholic girl. And so
Valid.
it's great. Yeah. So it's great. So we met each other at the right time, which
Yeah.
is awesome.
And I definitely think, God's timing's perfect.
Yeah.
And even though we have free will and we can sometimes, mess with that timing, he'll still meet us
Yeah.
where we are and he'll figure
Yeah.
it out. And I would say, maybe you're ready, but maybe your future wife or husband isn't.
Yeah.
And that's only something God knows, but it's something to keep in mind that, yes, you might be ready. You might feel like you're ready,
Yeah.
but maybe the person you're meant to marry isn't. And, marriage is a
Mhm.
two-way street. It's
Yeah.
both of you. It's not just you. It's not just
Yeah.
I want this and I want that.
Yeah.
It also you're catering to another person as well. And so that
Yeah.
doesn't change when you get married.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
before we close up this section, any like last tips or anything for people that you like to give for dating?
Yes, the Saint Anne novena is
Okay.
amazing.
Yeah.
Lots of friends have prayed that and have found future spouses. Not
Nice.
saying that it's a 100% guarantee because, like I said, maybe God knows
Yeah.
something you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also continue praying for your future spouse. I think
Hmm.
that's really, really important. Oh, I also wanted to say, also keep an open mind that you might not be called to marriage.
Yeah.
I think
Hmm.
that's really important. A lot of people assume, like, oh, this is what I'm called to because this is just the norm.
Hmm.
You might be called to a religious life. And if you're single
Yeah.
right now, this is the perfect time to be discerning religious life
Hmm. Yeah.
and to go at a come and see retreat or to stay with the brothers or sisters you might be thinking about. Just going for fun, no expectations. Again,
Yeah.
no expectations.
Yeah.
Don't be like,
Exactly.
I'm going to be a nun. Oh no. Don't
Yeah.
do that.
Hmm.
Just be like, well, I'm going to go see because I have nothing holding me down right now. I'm not in a relationship. I have no expectations
Yeah.
because that's the perfect time. And
Yeah.
if you have found that, like me, I stayed with some Dominican sisters and I was like, no. God was like, yeah, you're not supposed to be here. And I was just like, I
Mhm.
know. Um,
That's funny.
and, and then I found my husband a year later. So
Nice. There you
there's
go.
that. But,
Yeah.
also just keep that in mind. I always like to
Yeah.
tell people that is also sometimes what God's calling you to. So if you're not completely sure and you haven't discerned religious life yet, maybe
Mhm.
try that too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're gonna get into the Saint draft to close this, but if you want to do your plug for like where can people find your stuff?
Oh, yeah.
I mentioned the religious hippie, but you can go ahead and plug your stuff.
Yes, I have a podcast called A Catholic's Perspective. Season 5 is coming out in September, so that's really exciting. And then basically, you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at The Religious Hippie.
Nice,
Yeah.
perfect. And if I'll get you or someone to send over all those links, and I'll include them
Yes,
in the
I'll have
description
Anthony do it.
below.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're watching, you guys can see in the description below. But now it's for the final, the signature, and I have this ongoing joke. There's this guy who does awesome multimedia stuff for our diocese, and I always joke with him, and I say it every episode to see if he's watching that. One day he'll be like working for me at this podcast and doing all this. It would pop up and say Saint Draft or whatever. So if you guys watch for the first time, because maybe one of Amber's fans that just found my channel for the first time. This is the famous Saint draft, and I just call it that because it's famous in my heart. But we're going to be drafting just like the NBA draft. We're going to draft back and forth. Starting five Saints plus a sixth man who's like a blessed or venerable, like hasn't quite become a saint yet. So there's some awesome ones, especially next year. We got a couple becoming saints, and we're going to draft and see who can draft the best team of saints that if they were alive today, they would save the world. But like always, there's no wrong or right answers. Any team of saints would really do amazing work today. But yeah, do you have any questions on the Saint draft?
No, let's do it.
Great. Okay. So the guest always goes first. You get the number one pick in the draft, and you always just say what saint you would pick, and then just like a short little like I would pick this saint because this.
Okay. I would definitely say, okay, I pick Saint Drago because he is the patron saint of ugly people and coffee. And I feel like on a football team, you get kind of messed up out there, but
Yeah.
also you need caffeine.
Yeah.
He's going to be like
That's
the energizer.
awesome.
He's going to be like,
Yeah.
yeah, let's go, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He may be actually a great, like, yeah, he'd be like that when he is on the bench. Like, he's still there, just like, let's go.
He's like the water boy, but like the
that's-
cool one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. You know, that I should have something that like pops up that says like first time saint. Like,
Yeah.
saint has never made it onto anyone's starting five yet. So
Woo, woo.
that's a good one. I would go if I'm trying to save today's world, I would go probably like Saint Dymphna. We got so much like mental illness nowadays, especially with social media.
Facts.
We need someone that the patron saint of mental illness to help with all of that.
100%. Okay, let me think. Okay, definitely Saint Teresa of Avila.
Okay.
Like she could kick some butt in today's world.
Yeah.
I mean, she would be able to really root out like all of the misconceptions around here today and like just kind of set people straight. I feel like she'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. We named all our cats after saints, and I have a cat named Avila.
I love that.
I always have to mention them. Okay, so my number two then would be. I feel like the family, the family culture in complete and like all of society is just like obviously falling apart. And so I always pick these people and I always like say this is like kind of bending the rules, but I can't carry them around in my water bottle. But St. Louis and Zelly Martin.
I love them.
If I could only pick one, even though they're kind of partnered together, I'd go St. Zelly Martin.
I love that.
I love that. Have you ever heard of that book, The Extraordinary Parents of Saint Therese?
I feel like I've heard of it. I don't think I've read it though.
It's amazing because it's literally like letters they wrote to them. Like it's their story, and then it'll say Saint Zelly sent him a letter saying, and then
Aw,
in quotations it has a letter she wrote. And so I'm like, this is
I
super
want
cool.
that.
Yeah, yeah, because they spent a lot of time away from each other, and then hearing about obviously all their kids that became not only religious life but also saints, is just
Right.
amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um,
All right, round 3.
okay. Definitely St. Maximilian Kolbe. Like,
great one.
we need him today more than ever for the pro-life movement and just the unnecessary just killing in general of innocent human lives that we see every single day in our world.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, he would be really great to help us kind
Yeah.
of figure out how to not just process it, but also how to combat it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I have It's too far. I can't reach it, but I have these cool from Spirit Juice, I think.
Okay.
They sent this. I went to this conference, so like if you sign up for an email list, we'll send you a bag of coffee. I'm like, absolutely, I'll give you my old email for that. And so they sent me this bag of coffee, and it has these prayer cards in it, which I don't think I have any of them over here, but it has these prayer cards on that look like retro baseball cards. They're super cool, and I have Maximilian Kolbe over there, and on the back,
I love it.
It looks like a baseball card with like their stats, but it just has like where they're from and what year they died and all this stuff. It's pretty cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Also, my other cat's named Colby. So,
Huh.
Okay. So number 3 for me, I'd probably go just a great leader and just someone who we were talking about moral authority the other day at a coffee with a donor. And Saint Teresa of Calcutta, like Mother Teresa, obviously had moral authority. It's great. Everyone loved her, no matter if they agreed with all her thoughts. But also, I think John Paul II did as well. I love John Paul II.
He's great.
He would just be a great. I always say, like, I don't know enough about Pope Francis to say anything. Nothing necessarily bad about him, but bringing John Paul II back to today's world would be amazing.
He would know how to handle things for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Number 4. Oof. It's kind of hard because I'm like, there's so many who I could choose from who are like really popular. Yeah. I'd say St. Thomas Aquinas.
Ooh, okay.
Mainly because of the insane amount of like philosophy that we have out there today.
Yeah.
And how people are literally just taking things and just twisting it now. Like there's so many different types of philosophy out there that are just so blatantly wrong that he would be able to just be like, wrong, here's why, wrong, here's why.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he'd be great. It'd be awesome. We have a guy like that on campus here, our catechist, our assistant director of formation. He's amazing. This guy's like master's in theology, and he works with the students.
Okay.
We're on a college campus. Now, we're lucky. We're not on like a super liberal college campus. We actually have like an honors college that's got like 28 Catholic professors. They jokingly say we're the undisclosed Catholic honors college. But he has conversations with people all the time, and he's been having this 3-year conversation with the I always forget, Reformed United Fellowship pastors. Like, I think a Presbyterian college ministry or whatever. Well, as of this past, I think 3 weekends ago, him and his entire family just came into the church.
Wow.
Because this conversation they've been having, it's just like,
it's awesome.
Wild. So yeah, so someone like St. Thomas Aquinas would be great for like the more wildly
crazy people,
philosophy that's out there.
True.
I would go with number 4. Yeah, this is where it's like, it's not hard to think of more. It's that there's too many. It's like, man, there's so many good ones that could go in there. I would say number 4. Now, if I'm going role players, so I need someone that's just like a prayer warrior and a faith warrior, just such a great person. I'd go Saint Therese.
Yeah,
keeping the family there at the Martins. But yeah, Saint Therese of Lisieux. I just like, I just love the story of her, like, when after she died and the sisters writing her eulogy are like, we don't know what to write. She didn't really do anything.
I want to be like that.
Yeah, wasn't until they found her writings later. I'm like, that's so cool. Like, that's awesome. No.
That's amazing.
Yeah. One more saint each, and then we'll do like the blessed at the end.
Okay. I'm gonna go with Saint Alphonsus Liguori because
you have to tell. I don't know that one.
So Saint Alphonsus, a lot of people will know him because they're like, "Oh, his books gave me scrupulosity." I think I really do that. I do think that Saint Alphonsus would really solve the lukewarm Catholicism that we see today. He would be able to call it out in such a charitable and loving way that we wouldn't be able to do anything but feel conviction. And I think St. Alphonsus would be really great at this whole like nihilism we're seeing today, and
Yeah.
the what is it called? Like, my truth is my truth, your truth is your truth. What is that called?
Mm,
It starts with an A.
yeah.
Anyway,
I
people
can't.
know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, and so I think especially these days he would be really good at being, like, let's just snuff that out.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
rekindle this fire in people. That's not
Yeah.
brimstone and fire, but is like, this is
Mhm.
truth, follow
Yeah.
it, believe it, etc.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Such a weird world we live in.
It's true.
I
It's
think
true.
I would go then someone like, because I feel like there's a bunch of demons running around anyway. This world is like Saint Padre Pio or something. I think
Yeah.
wasn't he the one that like actually had like physical altercations with demons or Satan himself
He was kicked
and
around a bunch. He also had the
yeah.
stigmata.
Yeah, yeah. And was he an exorcist?
I don't believe so. He was a Capuchin
Okay.
monk.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's right.
but he was
But
known
still.
during World War II to save his village from bombing. He appeared to the pilots
Oh,
who were
nice.
going to drop
That's awesome.
bombs. Mm-hmm.
Oh wow,
Pretty cool.
that's amazing. Yeah, some of the stories of saints, people don't read up on
Yeah.
saints more. Like I always have to sometimes remind myself and double check myself to make sure I'm in this book more than I'm in like my stories of the saints. But the stories of the saints should be a close second because
They're
those are so
phenomenal.
yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah.
All right, final pick will be a blessed or venerable, someone who's not quite a saint yet.
This is not going to come to any surprise to anybody. Archbishop Fulton Sheen,
Oh
100%.
yeah,
Like,
he's another one of my retro
100.
baseball cards over there. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's so great.
He's, especially with the social media world we have today. I also would have gone with like Blessed Carlos Acutis, but
Yep.
Archbishop Fulton Sheen just has a special place in my heart. Obviously,
Yeah.
where is he? He's right here.
Oh, I can see it now.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I love him.
I have yeah, he's over there. So, blessed. I have Carlos Acutis over there too. I did not even know that. Yeah, Carlo Acutis is one of mine too. I'm not gonna pick him on this one because I have a story for the other one. But I love that he like appeared to his mother and was like, "I'm in heaven,
Yeah.
and God told me there's gonna be a whole generation of saints follow me." I'm just like,
So excited.
that's encouraging. Yeah, it's like, that gives me hope. But I'm actually gonna go with this one's actually very recent. Like I don't know, did you go to Seek? Have you been to
No, I
Seek
wasn't
before?
able to, unfortunately.
Okay, so Focus has a servant of God now. Like her case was just accepted.
Okay.
Into it all. But at Seek, or maybe it was right after. I can't remember. But like I remember I was taking my like almost 2-year-old at the time, like trying to put him down, and he just will not sleep through the night, and I was just getting so frustrated. And I would like in the process, like I put him down and went back to bed and I was sleeping. In before he woke up again, I literally like had this dream. And during RCA, our priest was like, "Hey, we're gonna do this kind of meditative style prayer." I can't remember exactly which one it was, but we basically envisioned a place. It doesn't have to be a real place, just a place where only you and Jesus are. So you're sitting there, and now Jesus walks up, puts his arm around you, and asks like, "What's going on?"
Yeah.
Just a place you guys can go and talk. And it's just like, for me, it's just grassy hills. Like I'm just being able to see all these hills and the grass, kind of like long grass, like blowing. It's really cool. And I'm just picturing this place. And so in this dream, like I'm there and I'm just sitting, and I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like I'm like gonna wake up every night. This sucks. Like it sucks so bad. And I'm just like talking this, and it's a place where like waiting, like where's Jesus at? Like come on, I need to talk to you. And all of a sudden I just hear this voice. It's like, remember your son's face when he smiles and waves at you before you leave. Like leave for work, like remember that face. And I'm just like, man, that's such a good point. Like remembering, like while I'm getting so frustrated, and it's not towards him necessarily, it can sometimes become towards him when it shouldn't, but I'm like getting so mad. But I remember turning around and looking, and it was Michelle Dupont is her name.
Okay.
And I was just like, what in the world? Like, and they had this whole thing like send in like any like miracles that happen. I remember emailing them, and I was like, this wasn't a miracle by any means, but and I just told them that story, and it was just such a cool, like vivid, like one of the most clear dreams I've ever had. It was such a cool, like, I don't know what's going to come out of her story and everything like that. I don't know anything really about her aside from she served as a Focus missionary, ended up getting leukemia, I believe, and continued to serve although she was sick, and just always had so much joy.
She was younger, right?
It's amazing. Yeah.
She was younger, and she was an athlete, and then she contracted some sort of cancer. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do remember. I think I actually posted about her recently. For some reason the name didn't come to me, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, parenting's hard, first of all. So,
Yeah.
you know, you got to give yourself a little slack there.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, just remembering the good stuff, because I think a lot of times bad stuff can outweigh the good stuff
Yeah.
if we choose to focus on it. And I think that's
Yeah.
something that people don't realize is when people are like, everything's so bad. I'm like, but you're choosing to focus on the bad. There's so much good in
Yeah.
your life as well.
Yeah.
Focus on that.
Yeah.
And that's just to everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
that's so important. Just like a little.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we
Yeah.
brought sin into this world, so there will always be bad as
True.
well, but we can't let that drag us down. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
awesome. Well, hey, you guys comment below which one team you guys think won there. Who has the team that'll save the world? Obviously, there's no wrong
I'll give you all
answers.
$5 if you pick me.
Just drop your Venmo in the comments. I'll do 6. But we'll outbid each other. I spent $300, but I won.
It was worth it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, Amber. Thanks again for being on. We definitely hope to have you back sometime. Maybe when I come up with a new game, I'll bring you back. And actually, if you're and a husband want to, we're going to be doing like this Catholic newlywed type game.
Yeah.
I'm looking for some couples, so I'll definitely reach out to you guys at some point. But other than that, you guys don't forget, again, like, subscribe, and don't forget to visit her channels over there, everywhere you can visit. And we will see you guys next week with Tanner Kalina, who was on staff of the Eucharistic Congress. And yeah, so some great guests recently. We were very blessed here. So again, thank you for being on.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Talk to you guys all soon. Anytime.